59 the noes, 61 the question is not agreed to. Call on members. Order of the day number 5.
Environment Canterbury Democracy Restoration Amendment Bill, first reading.
Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Environment Canterbury Democracy Restoration Amendment Bill be now read a first time, and I nominate the Local Government Environment Select Committee to consider this bill. Mr Speaker, can I begin by acknowledging my former parliamentary colleague Brendan Burns, who at the time of the lodging of this bill on the ballot was the Member of Parliament for Christchurch Central. He came second in the last election to Nicky Wagner, and so I have the privilege of taking this bill over, and it's now in my name. But I have to acknowledge Brendan not just for the work he did on this bill, but the work he did on many issues in Canterbury and indeed around the country. Mr Speaker, a lot of members of the House will know that sometimes when the night's getting long and the debates are starting to get a bit short, that we have a bit of fun over titles of bills, that we make up interesting titles for bills that we don't agree with, and use our 5 minutes or 10 minutes of speaking time for that. And some people might read this title, Environment Canterbury Democracy Restoration Amendment Bill, and say, is that made up? Because surely you must have democracy in Canterbury. There couldn't be a need for democracy restoration in one of the finest provinces in the country. But let me explain to the House, Mr Speaker, that in March of 2010, the then Minister, the Honourable Nick Smith, took away the right of Cantabrians to vote for our regional council. It was an extraordinary move, supported by National Party members of Parliament from Canterbury, and that with just a debate we lost our right to vote. Dr Paul Hutchison says they made a balls up. Well, of course, there has never ever been a single local authority, in the whole history of New Zealand, anywhere in the country, that hasn't made a mistake, or hasn't gone fast enough, or hasn't been of the political flavour of the government of the day. But, Mr Speaker, they don't get scrapped, because what we treasure more than anything in New Zealand is our right to vote. And if we end up not getting the person we voted for, we say, well, bother, darn, blast, but that's democracy. It's sort of the downside of democracy, that you don't get who you want, but it's a treasured part of a democratic process. Our right to vote for our own councillors was taken away because Nick Smith had been implored by the Member of Parliament for Rangitata, Honourable Joe Goodhue, by the Member of Parliament for somewhere south of that, Jackie Deans, and aided and abetted by our Mayor, I regret to say, Bob Parker, and the current Member of Parliament for Christchurch Central, Nicky Wagner, who all conspired to say, let's get rid of this lot. In my view, Mr Speaker, it was about more than just frustration with the council. It was about who controlled access to our water and who controlled the rights to consenting for irrigation. That is the biggest issue in Canterbury. We have the issue of water like no other region has, and Environment Canterbury, we're concerned about it, and we're putting in place a water management strategy which would have given our control of water back and taken it out of the hands of irresponsible irrigators. That has all gone now in the main, other than through the Canterbury Water Management Strategy, which the Environment Canterbury councillors and then Chief Executive started before they were sacked. So, Mr Speaker, this is a pretty straightforward bill. It just says, like it or lump it, democracy is the best thing to have, and we shouldn't throw it out lightly. People have died for it, quite literally. Thank goodness they haven't had to. In New Zealand, thank goodness we've always had better respect for democracy. But, Mr Speaker, I think that it's about time. You know, we've had a good period now. We've had 2 years with commissioners appointed by the government. And this bill, by the way, is not a criticism of any of them individually. I can't be bothered with that sort of debate. I've got respect for some of them, I don't agree with others. That's not the point. It is not whether we like people or not, it's not whether we're politically on side with them, it's not whether they'll do the bidding of the Prime Minister or the Minister for the Environment and let irrigation consents be granted inappropriately, or whether they'll be the lapdog of the local Member of Parliament. It's whether we as Cantabrians have a right to vote for what we see as our elected representative. Doesn't seem like a very big ask to me, Mr Speaker, but just while I'm on the topic of commissioners, we did have a bit of entertainment in that, of course, Wyatt Creech, a former National Cabinet Minister and highly respected person in his own right, had done the review of Environment Canterbury. Nick Smith came into the House and quoted it in all sorts of bizarre ways. Sorry, misquoted it, actually. Wyatt Creech was put in the most humiliating position of having statements apparently read out. The Minister would open it and say, look what Wyatt Creech has said. And when you read it, Wyatt Creech hadn't said that at all. He didn't say anything like that. So poor old Honourable Wyatt Creech had his name sullied in the House by Nick Smith. And the next thing, we hear that Jenny Shipley, the Right Honourable Jenny Shipley, former Prime Minister and leader of the National Party, that she was going to be one of the appointed commissioners. Well, that would have been a significant conflict given her role in Genesis Energy. But after that was in the paper and a few weeks of speculation, the Right Honourable former Prime Minister was forced to say, well, actually, I can't take up that job. It would be a bit of a bother. So there was quite a lot of controversy with Nick Smith misrepresenting what Wyatt Creech had said in his review of ECAN, and then Jenny Shipley being touted, and it was widely known, certainly in Canterbury and Wellington circles, that her name had gone forward at the top of the list to be an Environment Canterbury Commissioner, and then it didn't come to pass. Mr Speaker, I also want to acknowledge the people who were councillors, who were elected councillors at the time of their dismissal, because in my view, not only did they do a fine job in a very highly politically charged arena, there was a lot of political tension within Environment Canterbury, and that's what you get when you vote for people who don't agree with each other. I think we have a fair bit of that in this House, and I haven't noticed many ministers come into this House and saying, well, we argue a lot in Parliament, we don't often reach agreement, we should sack Parliament. That's actually what they did. But there was a lot of tension there, but in my view, all the sacked councillors have behaved with a lot of dignity and respect of the institution. They haven't gone around saying, I did a good job, I want my job back. They've said, we were doing our best, there were some tensions, it was difficult, we couldn't reach agreement all the time. There was a lot of infighting. But actually we were elected to do our job. The Canterbury Water Management Strategy is a good document. I think the member should be very careful mentioning water, given how much she thinks it's dangerous. Given the fact that she wrote to the Honourable Jim Anderton when he was a minister and said, please do something about this dangerous substance, which I have been told is so common in New Zealand. And that substance turned out to be water. Very risky subject. I watched the minister table that member's letter in the House, and I think I'll go down to the tabling office soon and retrieve it so that I can retable it, because it's a new session of Parliament. Mr Speaker, I guess from the interjections opposite, we're getting an indication that this bill may not be supported, which I think is very disappointing. Because, as I said at the beginning, what we're asking for, I think, is something that every other New Zealander would expect as a matter of right, and that is our right to vote for our regional councillors, whether we get the person we want in the end or not. I'm having a current battle with the Environment Canterbury Commissioners. I take the opportunity to place on record that I think their decision to not allow Cantabrians to have existing use rights to put in log burners is a mistake. It's dumb, it's wrong. Actually, I think the elected councillors would have done it, and I would have been arguing with them. So this is not about any current or past battle or any future battle I might have with the commissioners or, in fact, with our elected councillors. This is about a fundamental point of democracy that has been stolen from us in Canterbury in a way that has never been seen before in New Zealand's proud history of supporting participation and supporting rights. It's our region, it's our water, it's our vote. Mr. Speaker, all we're asking is for that vote to be given back to us.
I call Nikki Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.